This is not just another Vatican promotion. This is a move that has heaven stirring and hell trembling. In a moment that stunned the faithful and shocked even seasoned Vatican insiders, Pope Leo XIV has placed Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle in a position of staggering influence, a role that, on paper, may look administrative, but in the shadows of prophecy, it means so much more. Because if you know the past, if you remember what happened last time the conclave doors were sealed, you'll recall this name, Tagle. He was the rising star, the Asian Francis. The papabile that many whispered would reform the church from within. And yet, he was passed over. What happened in that secret room? Why was a man once seen as the church's global future rejected in silence? And why now, under the rising leadership of Pope Leo XIII, is he being brought back into the center of power? Could it be that Tagle's appointment is not just political, but prophetic? For decades, visionaries spoke of an Asian pope, a humble shepherd who would rise from the margins to lead the flock through the final storms. From the shadowy folds of the third secret of Fatima to the forgotten pages of St. Malachi's papal prophecy, the signs were dismissed. Until now. Because Tagle's rise is not happening in a vacuum. It's happening amid whispers of heavenly warnings, unusual signs in Rome, and secret gatherings inside the walls of the Vatican. A shift has begun, and the question that now echoes from every cathedral to every hidden Marian shrine is simple, yet terrifying. Is Cardinal Tagle being positioned to be the next Pope? If so, why now? Who is behind it? What was seen in his past rejection that is now being reversed? And more importantly, what does heaven want us to see in this moment, before it's too late? Stay with me, because what we uncover in the next few minutes may reveal not just a church strategy, but a divine timeline unfolding before our eyes. A breaking shift within the highest ranks of the Catholic Church has just been set into motion, and yet, on the surface, almost no one sees what's really happening. Pope Leo XIV, the newly enthroned and fast-moving leader of the Vatican, has just announced a surprising elevation for Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. To many, it may seem like just another Vatican reshuffling, but behind the curtain of religion and ritual, there is movement, there is purpose, there is prophecy. The man once quietly removed from center stage has now been summoned back, this time not to the sidelines, but towards something greater. Something final. Luis Tagle, the smiling cardinal from the East, once dismissed in secret by the College of Cardinals, has been handed a role that places him at the nexus of global influence, papal power, and eschatological expectation. He was overlooked in the last conclave. We all remember. It wasn't spoken openly, but something happened. Something behind locked doors. The cameras saw only white smoke, but heaven saw the ripple. A man beloved by millions, a symbol of humility and reform, was cast into the shadows. Many believed it was over for him, that the papacy had passed him by forever. But prophecy never dies. It only waits. And now that same man is back, handpicked by Pope Leo XIV himself, at a time when the church is splintering, when the silence from heaven is cracking, and the warnings of Fatima are resurfacing with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a symbolic move. No, this was a calculated installation, a key turning in the lock of something ancient. The Vatican will never admit this aloud, but those closest to the sacred walls have begun whispering again. Tagle has returned, and this time they may not be able to stop him. Because if this were about mere administration, the timing would make no sense. If this were about diplomacy, it wouldn't coincide with the rise in Marian apparitions, the resurgence of old prophecies, or the chaos creeping into the church from within. But it does. Luis Tagle's new role isn't just influential, it's essential. By being given control over one of the church's most strategically sensitive positions, one that oversees not just doctrine, but the global structure of evangelization, Tagle is now in a place to quietly shape the ideological soul of the church. Not tomorrow, not in the distant future. Now, and in prophecy, timing is everything. There is a chilling connection that cannot be dismissed. Tagle's rise matches too closely the signs spoken by mystics and saints from Senior Lucia of Fatima to Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, a leader from the East, a church in crisis. A final shepherd chosen when the world least expects it. They saw it, they warned us. But the world wasn't ready to listen. Now the whispers are growing louder. What did Pope Leo XIV see that made him act now? What does he know about the unfolding path of the Church and of the world? Because the man who now supports Tagle's rise is no ordinary pontiff. Pope Leo XIV's own election was shrouded in mystery, preceded by a sudden conclave, marked by rumors of divine signs above Rome, and followed by a quiet but firm cleansing of the old guard. He has shown himself not afraid to break from tradition. And this move, this endorsement of a once rejected cardinal, feels deliberate, preordained. Was this planned long ago? Or is something or someone orchestrating a realignment from above? We are watching a spiritual chessboard being rearranged, and the next few moves may determine more than leadership. They may signal fulfillment. Even now, in corners of the Vatican where relics of saints rest in silence, tension is rising. Some are rejoicing quietly, others are afraid. They know what this means. They know that Tagle's ascent is not a footnote, it is a foreshadowing, because there are those who still remember a prophecy not often spoken in public. A chilling vision from the margins of Fatima that described a bishop robed in white, walking through a destroyed city, surrounded by bodies and ruins, before he too falls. Many interpreted this as a warning about a future pope. For years, eyes turned to Pope John Paul II, then to Benedict, then to Francis. But what if it was never about them? What if it was always about him? What if Tagle is that bishop, the one foretold in shadow? This isn't conspiracy. This is scripture echoing through time. This is what happens when prophecy, politics, and power collide in the same man. And it's happening now. There's something else, something even more unsettling. Some insiders have claimed that before Pope Francis passed, a sealed letter was delivered directly into Pope Leo's hands. Its contents have never been revealed. But sources say it contained instructions, visions, and names. One of them, Luis Antonio Tagle. Is it true? The Vatican will never confirm it. But if that letter exists, then what's unfolding now was written long before any of us were watching, and the question becomes, how much time is left before the final phase begins? The Church has always moved slowly, but when heaven decides to speak, everything accelerates. That's what this is. That's why you're seeing all of this, now. The rise of a pope, the shaking of foundations, the re-emergence of ancient warnings, and now the reappointment of a man once cast aside. You are witnessing the movement of something bigger than power. You are witnessing the rise of a prophetic axis. And if you think this is just about Tagle, think again. This is about the final battle for the soul of the Church. This is about the blood of the martyrs crying from beneath the altar. This is about a door opening that no man can close. The winds are rising, the veil is thinning. And Tagle, whether he knows it or not, is being positioned for the storm. You must decide whether this is coincidence or calling. But one thing is certain, he was once rejected. Now he is returning, and soon he may be wearing white, and if he does, if Cardinal Luis Tagle ascends to the chair of Peter, it will not simply mark the beginning of a new papacy. It will mark the fulfillment of something long foretold, whispered not by politicians or priests, but by prophets, seers, and saints whose words have outlived empires. Because this man, this shepherd from the East, carries more than just humility and intellect. He carries weight. Not the kind measured in power or pride, but in prophecy. Pigophum. Kind that heaven seals with silence until the hour has come. And now, the hour is near. Already, unseen tremors are shaking the global Church. Already those loyal to the old guard are scrambling, wondering how they let this happen, how they let a man once rejected, a man from Manila, step back into the center of God's unfolding story. But it was never up to them, because when heaven chooses, no conclave can block it, no faction can stop it. And now the door has been opened. If you listen closely, you'll hear it in the air, a tension, a quiet thunder. Something is shifting. Something is aligning. This isn't just the rise of a man. This is the rise of a moment, and whether or not Tagle ever wears the white robe, he has already stepped into the pages of prophecy. You've seen the signs, you've heard the warnings, you've felt the pull towards something sacred, something final. So, ask yourself, was this just news or was it a message? A message that the time of comfort is ending. A message that the season of decisions is upon us because the shepherd is rising, the hourglass is emptying, and the final keys are being placed, one by one, into the hands of those chosen from the beginning. Watch closely. The next pope may not simply lead the church, he may be the last one to stand before the storm. He was once rejected. Now he is returning, and soon he may be wearing white. But this story, beloved, is not just about one man. It is about a battle, a shaking, a holy confrontation between what is seen and what is coming. Because every age has its forerunner. Every generation has a voice raised before the storm. And every throne carries with it a divine test. Not just for the one who sits upon it, but for the world that must choose whether to follow light or shadow. Cardinal. Tagle's name now echoes in rooms where silence was once absolute. His footsteps are stirring the marble beneath St. Peter's dome. But it is not just Rome that is listening. Heaven is watching. Do you not feel it? The convergence of events, the perfect timing, the weight of decisions that seem small to man, but massive in the eyes of eternity. Tagle's rise is not merely a return. It is a revealing of what was hidden, a revealing of what has been planned, and perhaps a revealing of the one who has been chosen to carry the church into the days no one wants to speak of. The days when the fire will test all things. Already the signs multiply. Whispers of Marian apparitions are resurfacing across continents. Unexplained signs in the sky are drawing the gaze of the faithful and the fearful alike. A war of ideology is now raging within the Vatican itself, between those who cling to the word and those who would twist it in the name of unity. And now, Tagle steps into the breach, not with power, not with pride, but with something far more dangerous, hope, because the enemy fears a shepherd who believes. The darkness trembles before a leader who kneels, and that is why this moment matters, because a choice is being made, not just in the Vatican, but in the unseen realm. A choice about who will lead, who will obey, and who will fall away. And if the prophecies are right, if the visions seen by the saints and scribes of old are to be believed, then what we are witnessing now is not politics, it is fulfillment. The image is clear in the minds of those who understand, a man in white walking through ruins, a cross standing atop a crumbled dome, the silence of heaven just before the trumpet sounds, and in the middle of it all, a name. Tagle, chosen, perhaps appointed? Possibly, but one thing is certain. This story is not over, because heaven never raises a shepherd without first stirring the storm he was born to walk through. Then listen closely. Because the time for comfort has passed, and the time for clarity has come. He who has ears, let him hear. For the Spirit of God is moving across the face of the church, not with thunder, not with spectacle, but with a quiet, sacred shaking. And those who are still, those who are awake, will feel it in their spirit like a trembling in the bones. Tagle's rise is not the story, it is the sign. It is the crack in the wall that reveals the war behind it. The echo of something ancient. The beginning of the last breath before the trumpet is sounded. He has walked in the footsteps of Peter. He has carried the humility of Francis. But he may be called to bear the sorrows of Jeremiah, to weep, to warn, and to lead a church through its darkest fire, because prophecy does. Not appoint the comfortable, it summons the willing. And those willing to suffer for truth are the ones who shake kingdoms. And now, as the church prepares for what it cannot yet see, the faithful must ask themselves, what if the bishop in white was not a symbol, but a soul? What if the city in ruins is not metaphor, but map? And what if the shepherd walking through that smoke is not a distant warning, but a man alive right now, being moved, positioned, prepared? The third secret of Fatima, the prophecy of the final pope, the war between truth and false unity. They all collide in this hour. They all whisper one name, not as an idol, but as an instrument. Luis Antonio Tagle. He was born far from Rome, but prophecy is not bound by distance. He was dismissed by men, but heaven needs no vote to anoint. And now he rises, not in fame, not in force, but in the silence between heaven's breath and earth's awakening. And the question hangs over all who have eyes to see. Will he lead the flock or stand among the fallen? Because the enemy knows. If he is chosen, if the robe of white falls upon his shoulders, then the time of sifting is near. The wheat and the tares will grow no longer side by side. The sword will fall between truth and deception, and the storm that has been held back will break. Then let it be said, not in fear but in fire, the days ahead will not be easy, the path will narrow, the voices of truth will be mocked, and the sound of compromise will echo in the halls of sanctuaries once holy. There will be peace, but it will be poisoned. There will be unity, but it will be forged in silence, not in spirit. And in that hour, many will ask, where is the shepherd? If the man now rising is the one spoken of, then his role will not be to crown himself in glory, but to stand between the church and the sword, to bear the weight of a dying age, to speak when others bow, to bleed when others flee, because prophecy does not exalt, it costs. The final pope, if this is him, will not be seated on a throne of triumph, but on a seat soaked in the prayers of the persecuted. The wolves will gather, the fire will come, and he will either stand as a shield or fall as a sign. Heaven is watching, hell is waiting, and earth is groaning. You, listener, must decide what this moment means for you, because this is no longer a time for passive faith. The line has been drawn in the spirit, and every soul must choose where they stand. Do not wait for official declarations. Do not wait for the church to tell you what you already feel deep within your bones. The hour is late. The signs are glowing, and prophecy has stepped out of the shadows, so if you have been stirred, it is not by accident. If your spirit feels the shaking, it is not emotion. You are being called, not to predict, not to panic, but to prepare. Because if Cardinal Tagle has indeed been chosen, then the silence is over, the story has turned, the trumpet has been raised, and the time of warning has given way to the time of fulfillment. Stand firm, pray without ceasing, and keep your eyes not on the man, but on the message, because when the final shepherd steps forward, the gate will close behind him, and all that was foretold will come. Amen.